Derek Saville was born in approximately 1929 in England. He grew up in the years of the Great Depression and came of age during the Second World War, a generation shaped by hardship, rationing, and a country that expected its people to get on with things without complaint. By the time peace came in 1945, Derek was in his mid-teens. England in those post-war years was slowly finding its feet again. Food rationing, which had been in place since the war, did not finally end until 1954 itself. For ordinary working people across the country, life in the early 1950s was still modest and careful, but there was also a quieter optimism beginning to take hold, a sense that the worst was behind, and that the years ahead might be easier than the ones that had just passed. Rural England in those years had its own particular texture. Away from the cities and the industrial towns, life moved at the pace that the land and the seasons set. In the villages and hamlets of counties like Herefordshire, deep in the English countryside, the fields rolling toward the Welsh border in the west and the Malvern Hills in the east, the rhythms of daily life had not changed dramatically from one generation to the next. People worked the land, kept animals, drove the buses and the delivery lorries, ran the shops and the pubs. They knew their neighbours. They remembered who had lived in which house for the past 20 years, who had courted whom, who had fallen out with whom, and why. In a community of 500 or 600 people, nothing went unnoticed for long. Social life in those rural communities was built around the institutions that brought people together. The pub was one, the church was another. Local dances were central, organised by young farmers' clubs, church groups, and village halls. They were among the few regular occasions when young people from the surrounding area could gather, socialise, and meet people from outside their immediate circle. In a world before television had reached most rural homes, before the coffee bars and dance halls of the cities were accessible to people living miles from the nearest town, a village dance or a young farmer's evening was where young men and young women found each other. Courtship in rural England in the early 1950s was a public affair, conducted in full view of the community, shaped by its expectations and subject to its opinions. It was into this world, quiet, watchful, and tightly bound, that Derek Saville made his life. He became a bus driver, steady, reliable work that suited a young man who knew his community and liked to be part of it. By the early 1950s, he had taken lodgings in a small hamlet called Bush Bank in Herefordshire, less than a mile from a small village 7 miles northwest of the city of Hereford. The village had a population of around 574 people. It was an agricultural place. Orchards and fields, a pub, a church, and the kind of community where everyone knew each other and nothing much happened without it being noticed. Derek fitted into that community naturally. He was a young man who made an impression wherever he went. Police, in the course of the investigation that would later follow his disappearance, described him in terms that said a great deal about who he was. They said his hair, his good physique, his neat clothes, and his happy-go-lucky attitude made him as attractive to girls as they were to him. He was known around the area as a bit of a ladies' man. Their words, not an accusation, simply a description of a personable, confident, and well-liked young man who moved easily through the social world around him. Police also noted that for that reason, some men who were less successful in having girlfriends might have had cause to dislike him. By 1954, Derek was 25 years old. He had money saved. He had a good job. He had friends across the community. And he had met a young woman who lived in the village nearby, at a house called Corner House. She was 18 years old. 7 years younger than Derek, she had grown up in the same close rural world, in a house that sat in the heart of the village itself. The two of them had come together in the way that young people in those communities did, through the shared social life of the area, through the gatherings and the dances and the daily routines of village life, where the same faces appeared again and again until familiarity became something deeper. By the autumn of 1954, their relationship had become serious. Those who knew Derek spoke of him as a man with plans, someone who hoped to marry her. She was not simply a passing acquaintance. She was the woman he intended to build his future with. She had not always been with Derek. Before he came into her life, she had been in a relationship with another man, a local man who had known her and courted her before Derek had. The two men, Derek and this other man, had at one point been genuine rivals. Both of them had been pursuing the same young woman at the same time, and the village had been fully aware of it. In the tight social world of rural Herefordshire in the early 1950s, that kind of rivalry was not a private matter. It was known, discussed, and remembered. In the end, she had chosen Derek. The other relationship had ended approximately 7 weeks before the 7th of December, 1954. The man she had left, or as he would later insist, the man who had ended the relationship himself, did not take the outcome quietly. He had made his feelings known in the community. People in the village had formed a view about him and about the jealousy they believed he carried. When investigators later gathered witness accounts, the general feeling they encountered was that his resentment of Derek and his inability to accept that the young woman had moved on had everything to do with what would happen next. On the 7th of December, 1954, a cold Tuesday evening in the Herefordshire countryside, Derek spent the evening with his girlfriend at Corner House. Before he left, he was carrying a bundle of clean laundry, a bag of washing he had collected and was taking back to his lodgings in Bushbank. The walk from Corner House to Bushbank was less than a mile along the country lane that connected the two settlements. It was a route Derek knew well. It was a walk he had made many times before. On that same day, the 7th of December, it was reported that the former boyfriend had approached Derek directly and threatened him. He had told Derek, in words that were later recounted to investigators, that he would get him. When police questioned the man, he denied having made any such threat. He said, "I know the gossips are saying that I was jealous of Saville, but it is all nonsense. As far as I'm concerned, I broke off with her." He denied any involvement in what followed. But the threat had been spoken. It had been heard. And it had been made on the same day that Derek Saville disappeared. At around 11:30 that evening, Derek said goodnight to his girlfriend at the door of Corner House. He kissed her. He left. He set off along the lane toward Bushbank with his laundry bag. He never arrived. The following morning, when Derek failed to turn up for work, the alarm was raised. He was reported missing. Police were called. Investigators began trying to establish what had happened on that country lane on the night of the 7th of December. What they found, and what they could not explain, was a complete absence. Derek was not at his lodgings. He was not at work. He was not anywhere that any person could account for. The laundry bag was also gone. It had not been dropped in the lane. It had not been found anywhere on the route between Corner House and Bush Bank. Police noted this explicitly in the course of the investigation, and they drew a clear conclusion from it. If Derek had simply collapsed or taken ill on the road home, the laundry bag would have been expected to remain where it fell, visible, easily found in daylight. The fact that it had also disappeared told investigators that the scene had been cleared. Whatever had happened on that lane had not been accidental. Someone had removed the evidence of it. Police stated clearly that they could not rule out foul play. They said they found it hard to explain why a man with money saved, a good job, a girl he hoped to marry, and many friends should simply vanish so completely. He had been threatened on the day he disappeared. He'd been walking alone on a dark country lane late at night. And everything that should have remained was gone. Police also acknowledged in their public statements that they could not entirely rule out the possibility that Derek had been killed accidentally, that a confrontation had taken place on that lane which had gone further than intended, and that whoever was responsible had then disposed of the body and the laundry to cover what had happened. But alongside that possibility, they stated plainly that the case was, in their view, almost certainly one of murder. The investigation was extensive. Detectives took over 1,000 statements from people across the area. Every house in the neighborhood was visited by officers asking about a man with a car who might have been seen near the lane or on the surrounding roads on the evening of the 7th of December. On the 22nd of December, it was reported that police were additionally searching for 2 stolen guns, which they believed might have provided a clue to what had happened. No connection between those guns and Derek's disappearance was ever publicly confirmed. Local and national appeals were made. The case was widely reported in the press. The former boyfriend who had threatened Derek was interviewed by police. He maintained his denial throughout. He was never arrested. No charge was ever brought against him or against anyone else. Derek's sister was among those most affected in the years that followed. She was later told she would have to leave her home because of the publicity surrounding the case. The way violent crime in a small, close-knit community spread outward and touched everyone connected to the person who was gone. The case went cold. Decades passed. Derek's body was never found. Then, in 2007, 53 years after Derek had kissed his girlfriend goodnight and walked into the dark, a new witness came forward. He was a man who had been living in Perth, Australia, and who had returned to England on holiday. He approached police with information about the case. What he provided was described by investigators as credible and tested evidence suggesting a specific location where Derek Saville's body might be buried. Police took the information seriously. Officers travelled to Perth, Australia, to interview the witness formally. Following those interviews, Herefordshire police launched an excavation they called Operation Panda. Retired officers who had worked on the original 1954 investigation were brought back to assist. No case files had survived from the original inquiry. The records of the 1954 investigation no longer existed, but the memories of those elderly officers were drawn upon as the dig proceeded. The operation was described at the time as one of Britain's oldest unsolved murder inquiries. The excavation found nothing. Derek Saville was not there. The site identified by the witness from Australia either did not contain what he believed it contained, or the information was mistaken, or the remains had long since been moved. The dig concluded without result. No further leads emerged. Hello everyone, thank you for listening and drop any feedback below. I would love to hear your thoughts and hope to see you again right here on Cold Case UK.